All right, and we're live. Welcome back to Corona Geek After Dark. I'm your host Charles McKeever, and we're waiting on people to show up. So in the meantime, let me introduce our special guest, Tobias Zarles.
I'm not that special.
What's your yeah? Well, you know how it is. You haven't been here before in an
That's
After
true. It's
Dark.
special because it's my first time on the show.
Yeah. Now, once I show you where the cups and the dishes and the silverware are, then after that you're on your own. You have to get your own stuff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
That's how we treat it around our house. You know, the first time we'll show you everything, we'll bring you stuff, and then after that, get it yourself.
Oh, I didn't even do that when I had friends over. I'd just be like, it's in the kitchen. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not the left one, it's the right one. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your official title, Tobias, these days? What are you doing?
It is Game Evangelist at Microsoft, which is a very crazy title unless you happen to know what a technical evangelist is. But it's my job as a Microsoft employee to help out game developers however I can. So I do online training videos, I go to hackathons, I run meetup groups, and generally kind of be there in the community, giving people free Microsoft software and setting them up on Microsoft platforms and helping them with any problems they come to me with.
So you get software and you get software and you get software.
Yeah. Pretty much. Like it's funny because it's under the sales part of the company, but I do the opposite of sales. I give away everything. I don't actually tell people to buy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, well, first of all, I believe everybody's in sales, no matter what they're in, right? Whether they're trying to convince their spouse to go to the movie or they're trying to convince their boss.
Yeah, some
right?
form of sales, one or
Yeah.
another, right?
But
it's probably worth noting from a Corona point of view that I wasn't always a Microsoft evangelist. Before that, I ran my own mobile studio for 4+ years called Yobanja. And we were most famous for a game called Blast Monkeys, which was #1 on Android for like 3 months in 2011. And I stopped keeping track of downloads in like 2012 when we passed like 10 or 12 million. And I did that for a few years before starting Microsoft. And it's notable because it was a Corona game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, congratulations for that. It's still out there, right?
It's still out there. You can still download it. I'm still making money off of it, actually. Not as much as I used to because we haven't been updating it. We used to update it every 2 weeks with new content, and that I think was pretty core to our success, and also, honestly, pretty core to what makes Corona awesome and unique. Because like even Unity, as great as it is, I don't think you can do 2 weeks every updates with it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to iterate on that kind of stuff. Did you guys see a bump every time that you put a new version out?
It was less about spikes. Like, we kind of had a exponential growth over time. It was pretty flat, and then we go up and up. Like, I would say probably 3-4 months in, we only had a couple thousand active users, and then like 2-3 months later, we were the #1 app. And it wasn't any one patch or spike. It was just more of, people liked it. They just wanted more of it, and eventually we got enough of it. And then once we reach that top, it goes up and down in wavers.
Yeah, we've still got you in the Hall of Fame. We probably need to update the 12 million downloads, though.
What's funny is I used to literally obsess over it. I had a spreadsheet. I updated every day. I knew who downloaded on what platform. And we were a 3-person company, and it literally started to make us sick. Like, you know what? I do not want to know how many people have downloaded this game. I stopped caring and just focused on, okay, people are playing, people are buying, let's add more content. And I just looked at, different kinds of metrics besides downloads. It's probably worth noting how many people I downloaded, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's not like it's at 100 million or anything. It didn't go that much higher, but I honestly have no idea where it's at right now.
This. I mean, you make me think. I was listening to a different podcast the other day, and they were talking about different genres of games and whether or not you needed a launch strategy or whether or not you should just sort of do a slow build. And the overall theme was that, yeah, if you're doing games, a launch strategy is probably a good idea because it's all about popularity and about getting attention and all these types of things. And then but they all kind of agreed that no matter what you were doing, whether you had a launch strategy or you just sort of did a slow build, it still would be extremely hard to stay at the top of the charts if you weren't some sort of big, big shop that had the budget and the marketing team to keep you there.
Well, if I were kind of critique ourselves as a company, we got to the number one spot and we didn't buy a single download. We did it all naturally. We did it all viral. We did it all just like constantly in the community. Like we were getting, 6 or 7 thousand emails a week, and we would respond to every single one of them. That's a whole nother story to why I think that was successful. But I think what I would have done in retrospect, what I could tell myself was, okay, in like 2012, probably 2013 is when we started having a dip. Then I would have put money back in and done some user acquisition and tried to keep us up kind of thing. But instead, it kind of went down, and then we got kind of burnout in the game, updating it every 2 weeks with a three-person team that, we wanted to do different things. And the other half of the company started a new company called Yazar Media Group, and they're doing some awesome stuff right now. And then I went off and started a second company, and before I could really do anything with it, I got picked up by Microsoft.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's been taking up my time.
Well, thanks for answering that question, because I did have the question as to what was the transitional bit there, but I wasn't sure if it was something you wanted to talk about or not.
No, it's not too much of a secret. Like instead of like, okay, let's keep doing Blast Monkeys, we'll do Blast Monkeys 2 eventually, but we took a break, and so far that break has lasted like 2.5 years, but we'll go back to it.
Is this like a friend's break? Like we were on a break sort of thing? Like,
Well,
you know what I'm talking about?
it, it's like we wanted to do other, different creative things, right?
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Remember that episode of Friends, the classic episode of Friends? We were on a
Oh,
break.
I'm so bad. I'm actually not a big Friends fan. I haven't seen very many episodes. I know you should totally do that, because I used to say that about Buffy, and then like a few years ago, one day I was like, okay, I need to not be out of the culture, and I just watched all of Buffy. And I'm like, I get all these references now.
Oh yeah, you're totally unplugged from cultural events if you don't have Buffy on your
I,
list.
I do now. I do now. As of like 4 years ago, whenever I watched it.
I'm messing with you. I've never seen it either.
Really? Oh man,
Yeah, right.
you should totally do it. It totally stands up. It's worth it.
Now let me ask you: do you ever run into those situations where you think you live in the same reality as everybody else, but then you get in a conversation with somebody and you realize they've never seen, oh, I don't know, Cool Hand Luke?
Um, what's Cool Head Luke?
Yeah, see, there you go. It's exactly what I'm talking about. Cool Hand
Uh,
Luke was what is his name? What's his name? Not Robert Redford. What's the Come on, Jason, help me out. The guy who made the salad dressing.
Newman.
No, Paul Newman. Paul Newman's got the and if you've ever heard Guns N' Roses,
It's failure to communicate, right?
yeah, where he says what we have here is a failure to communicate.
I've heard that reference.
Yeah.
It's so many different culture things. Saw a really good XKCD once that I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, he did the math, and if there's something that everyone knows by the time they're age 30, and how many people are born every day, and it turned out to be like about 10,000 something people are learning something for the first time that day.
Yeah.
And so he said, oh, if you haven't heard of something, you're one of the lucky 10,000.
Well, see,
So you don't say, like, oh my God, how could you not know this? You say, oh, you're one of the lucky 10,000. I get to teach you about it today.
here's the real magic of this moment is that when I said salad dressing, Jason popped on and said Paul Newman. So I don't know if he got the reference for Cool Hand Luke or if he got the salad dressing reference.
I know Newman's salad dressing.
No, I got the movie reference. I've seen it. For some reason, in my mind, I get Cuckoo's Nest mixed up with it, and there's no good reason for that, but I just do. They're from roughly the same era of cinema.
They're it's still I think it's still black and white. Yeah.
Early
Um,
70s, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, something like that. It's on the cusp, yeah. And then you got, what is it, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with him and, what's her name? I can't even remember her name anymore. I see her face. But anyway, yeah, there's a whole genre of movies there. So anyway, the point really was that you have that moment where there's some impactful element of that movie on you, and then you turn around and you have a conversation with somebody and they're like, I've never seen that, I don't know what you're talking about, and you're like, I've based all of my reality on that movie. What are you talking about? You've never seen it.
I'm kind of going through that really hardcore right now for this brand new game that came out less than a week ago called The Beginner's Guide. Any of you
Everybody's
guys?
talking about it. I have not played it, but Everybody's talking about it.
I don't want to talk about it. It shouldn't be talked about, but do not, whatever you do, look anything up about it. Don't read an article about it. Don't read the reviews. Don't even watch the trailer. It is best going in completely blind. It takes 2 hours of your time, and it's worth every second of it.
So here's the question. I have not yet played the Stanley Parable. Do I... Same developer?
You should play the Stanley Parable just because it's amazing, but I think you would probably appreciate it more if you have played it. You don't have to, but I think the first 30-second spoiler of the game is it's about him as a developer, and he's talking to you. So knowing what he's famous for will help, but it's not required. You can just accept that there's this game called Stanley Parable and people love it, and that's all you need to know. But I brought it up because it's one of those things that I'm going to constantly be referencing it, and I bet it's going to be constantly referenced by game designers in the future. But 5 years from now, no one will understand this game at all. They won't understand the references. They won't understand the use of default source textures and people recognizing that who've messed with the source engine. It's very specific, that audience, for certain people here and now.
Well, and you can't get away from that, though. I mean, there's just, I don't care what you're doing. If you're doing, there's an early, on Spotify, you can find sort of ragtime music, right? You can find early jazz. You can find anything that's like 20s, 30s, whatever, right? And listen to it, but it's just not, I mean, nobody today is going to really know what it is, right? I mean, we kind of all heard sort of historical clips and things, and we kind of get what it's about or whatever, but there's going to be, I don't know, there's going to even be like maybe 10 more years or so where people totally just forget about it, right? They didn't see it in cartoons or something. It'll just be, it'll be gone, but it'll resurge, right? Because somebody will bring it back and it'll be this big thing. And
kind of only this selective pool, right? If you think about how many books have been written that no one will ever read again.
Oh, right.
It's kind of saddening, right?
Yeah.
It's deafening on how many authors out there probably have work that's good, but it just didn't happen to surface over all other classic works of literature.
Yeah.
That applies to so many things, though. I mean, thinking about just, bringing it back to game dev, right? I mean, I think we're growing out of the generation of young people who know what Phantasy Star is, but those who do think it's Phantasy Star Online. And for me, having played Sega Master System Phantasy Star and loving it, Phantasy Star Online is beyond the pale for me. I'm like, that's not.
I think about that with World of Warcraft, because I'm a huge Warcraft nerd.
Warcraft 2? Oh.
And no one knows about World of Warcraft anymore. It's all World of Warcraft. It's Hearthstone. It's whatever.
Yeah, and there was a time that everybody was all about World of Warcraft, right? I mean, it was
at that time. How many players? Oh, 8. They're down to 7 million active players, all-time low. Each paying $15 a month. They're still pretty good. They're still pretty good right now.
I take those numbers.
Right. Yeah. It's a good point. A little bit of perspective, right?
They were at 12 million, and now they're 7, but 7 is still pretty good, and I'm pretty sure that fan base is more hardcore and probably going to stick with them for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing in a sort of not a related field, but on the same vein, Twitter right now is taking a lot of flack for their growth, right? I mean, you're not growing, you're not.
Well, Twitter's really an interesting position because they don't make money.
Well, sure, granted, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, but they have a huge population of people who use it every day. So, and the fact that they haven't figured out how to make money off it is kind of
I mean,
puzzling.
They're making some money. They got ads, but they're not making the kind of money that people want them to be making, having been so big. And certainly, they're not making Facebook money. Facebook is making bank in so many different ways.
Right. Yeah.
Have they had their IPO?
Oh man, that's a good question. I haven't been following Twitter enough closely.
I thought they did, but I heard somebody say the other day that the problem with that is that it's if they had IPO'd before Twitter, I mean before Facebook, it'd have been a big deal. But now
it's IPO'd.
Now it's like, well, this is the Facebook era, right? So now everything's compared to Facebook. So again, you're kind of like, well, World of Warcraft, how many subscribers do they have? You know, I mean, they're still doing pretty darn well,
Hmm.
considering. So, hey, speaking of doing pretty darn well, I want to bring up something that was announced today from Microsoft, and not necessarily because Tobias, you work for Microsoft, but I plan to talk about this whether you were here or not. Did you?
It's good timing.
It's good timing. Yeah, you know, it's worth mentioning that Microsoft launched some products today.
Yeah, we announced a couple of things, and I'm very excited about that. I say we, but like I'm just here as to buy. I don't represent. I guess I represent Microsoft to a degree, but I don't have any more information than you guys from what was said at the announcement.
Yeah. So let's talk about it then from from a techie perspective then. So I saw, for those who don't know what we're talking about, Microsoft announced some phones. I'll
Yes.
just say that because
The phones are probably the thing that everyone kind of knew about ahead of time. That was pretty heavily leaked and mostly accurate and unfortunate, but definitely some other cool devices.
But they also announced Surface Pro 4, which I think everybody was expecting,
Mm-hmm.
and that had upgrades, of course, over Surface Pro 3, and then they came out with Microsoft Surface Book, which is Microsoft's first laptop. I mean, officially, there's always been sort of OEM solutions and things like that, but this is from Microsoft, their first laptop.
And it's also convertible.
And it's also convertible, and so I think the biggest point of note was when when they detached the tablet from the keyboard. I don't think anybody was expecting that. I think everybody looked at it and said, "Oh, it's a laptop." And then
I assure you, I was not expecting that. I was just like, "That's amazing."
Yeah, that is great. Hey, Tobias, we're having a couple of audio issues. Do you think that's your connection, or you think that your batteries in your?
I'm on a landline. That's unfortunate. Let me text my wife to tell her to stop streaming if that's the case. Do you want me to leave and rejoin?
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of breaking up on us. It's you were clear there for a while. Jason, are you hearing me?
Wired or microphone Bluetooth?
It's wired.
Oh, okay, so that's not it.
I don't know. But yeah, so the laptop, the tablet disconnects from the keyboard, and I thought it was genius. They mentioned that a GPU is actually in the keyboard, which what I thought was kind of cool, right? Because now you're like when you go into tablet mode, so to speak, you're disconnecting from one of the more power hungry sort of peripherals, I guess you could call it, if you want to call a GPU a peripheral.
It's smart on smart in all sorts of ways. I mean, just in terms of the physical space of it, you're clearing out square inchage that would need to be kept forward in the main chassis, but now it's with the keyboard. And
yeah.
Almost what's more interesting to me, honestly, more than the tech, and maybe this is just because I don't know that I'm a customer for it, at least right away, is the politics of Microsoft sort of, and I think they've been smart about it. I think it's been over years. They have relationships with hardware vendors who for decades were not competitors with Microsoft. We're all part of this ecosystem, and they all fed each other, and then they introduced Surface, and so I think it's interesting. I mean, it's a very high-end price point, which I think might be a reason that they can stay in good graces with the Dells and Lenovo's of the world or what have you, because they're not necessarily competing for that sub $1,000 customer.
Yeah, and the Surface Book comes out at what? It's like $12.99 or $13.99 or something like that.
I think it's $14.99 for the book.
Is it $14.99?
$14.99.
It's $1,900 if you actually want the discrete GPU.
Yeah. Now, I think if you go up to if you get the what is it? I'm pulling up the specs here. Hold on. So if you get the high end, I think it came out to be $2,600 or something. So hold on. Let me screen share here. I've got the
the i7 512 gigabyte with 16 gigs of RAM is like $2,700.
Yeah. So so there we go. There's Surface Book.
I actually went to that earlier, and the most expensive SKU was showing as sold out.
I wouldn't doubt. I mean, look, yeah. So here you go. You got 512 gigabyte Core Intel i7, 16 gig of RAM. So if we choose that, yeah, we're at $2,700 plus tax or whatever, right? So
I think it's interesting because they're clearly not positioning themselves in competition with other Windows laptops out there, but definitely positioning themselves as a competitor for the Apple consumer whose minimum buy-in is at least $1,000.
Well, I think here's the thing is, and I heard this. I'm not making this up. I heard this on Twit. Mike Elgin said, really, this is kind of helping to draw attention to notebook computers in general, right? I mean, the sales of computers have been, or PCs or desktop computers or whatever you want to call them these days, basically laptops, has been kind of declining, and I think that something like this can really begin to draw attention back to the laptop or the PC or whatever as a viable device that has tablet capabilities and laptop appeal.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more people who just have a laptop as their main device. I have a Surface Pro 3, not one about Microsoft on me. It's just my own that I got, and it's my one-stop dev house for everything. But when I'm doing an iOS update, in which case I have to pull out the MacBook just to build.
Yeah,
I don't use my desktop anymore for work very much at all.
Yeah, I've seen you on because you do the Be Indie Now podcast, and I've seen your Surface as part of the backdrop. You're using it actively. Hey, your audio's still coming in kind of weird. You might want to drop out and come back.
All right, let me drop out and come back.
Yeah, maybe it's just a Google thing. We'll blame it on Google. But Jason, I was really pleased to see this. I've been saying for years that Apple should do something like this because it just made sense. If you think about it, the iPad Pro, you've been able to put a keyboard to an iPad for a long time, and if you've used a Surface at all, you know that you really don't need a mouse. I mean, you can get away with just reaching out and touching the screen and doing the things that you need to do.
Yeah, I have a Surface 3, not the Pro 3, just the 3. So I wasn't necessarily looking at it as a full-on laptop replacement, but I like the smaller form factor on it, easier to throw in a bag than the Pro, and I like it, and I like the type cover. But I will say the trackpad on it, if you're accustomed to a full-size laptop trackpad, is frustratingly small.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with the Surface Pro 4, they actually address that, right? Here's what I like to see about these companies. I don't know if it's just because of I think it's probably because of competition, right? Sometimes competition can be crippling because everything becomes about the competition, right? It becomes a destructive force. But in this case, I think that the competition, the rivalry, if you will, is healthy because what we're seeing is that companies are listening to customers, and I think Microsoft looked at what people said about the trackpad and they said, oh, you know what, you're absolutely right, it needs to be bigger, it needs to be multi-touch, it needs to be all these things, and the new type cover I thought was interesting because it has a fingerprint reader in it, so you can authenticate or whatever through that. Because I tell you what, I've got to the point I hate typing a password.
Yeah, it's hard to switch back once you have like a fingerprint reader or hello or some other thing that lets you have a level of security without having to type. Is my audio better now, by the way?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there.
Well, it might have been redialing in, but also my wife had a stream going on in the other end of the room, but not to blame her. She was breastfeeding, so she couldn't quite get up and turn it off.
Oh, yeah, congratulations, by the way. It was only
yes, I have a
few months ago. That's great, man.
Yep, she's 3 months now. Very excited.
That's cool. I can't believe it's been that long. I mean, it's it seems like just the other day you said you showed all the pictures and everything on social media, and I'm like, it's already been 3 months. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, time
Microsoft
flies.
announced their awesome paternity package like after the baby was born.
Oh, I know. As of October 1st, if you adopt a kid or have a kid and you're a Microsoft employee, you get 12 weeks paid time off. I was before that cutoff.
Wow.
But it's okay. It's okay. I took 2 months off. I half paid, half unpaid. I'm okay with that. We're California too, so I actually got like a disability check for not being paid too, which is interesting. But that's probably off topic for the show.
Yeah. Hey, do you have a? I hate to keep harping on your audio, but do you have a wind source or something there, a fan on you?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's well, all the reason I mentioned is I think the noise canceling is kicking in on your microphone and it takes your audio way down. So.
Oh. This is my first time using this setup here, and I just have these like cheap headphones set up. I normally have my awesome podcast mic at work, but I was working from home today.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I just we want to be sure that we hear you. So.
I promise you that if I do get on the show again next time, I'll make sure I keep my podcast mic.
It's amazing that those maternity, paternity. What is it? Maternity? I don't even know the term. Is it maternity when it's a man?
It's paternity if you're a man, but the gender-neutral term is parental leave.
Parental leave. Okay, so the parental leave thing is fantastic these days. I think it's great because there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And from a company standpoint. Your mind's not really on your work, right?
Yeah, not those first 2 months. Oh my God, we were getting very little sleep.
Yeah, and so it's better off just you just go focus on that thing, and we're just going to be over here doing this thing, and then we'll meet somewhere in the middle. It's fantastic. Well, I think that like I said, I think this Surface Book is a fantastic device. I'm interested to see what it does in terms of pushing everybody else to do something similar, right? Because I think personally, my opinion is that the Surface line has pushed everyone else to adopt like a not a laptop form factor, not an alternative laptop, but basically to put a keyboard to whatever tablet they had.
Yeah, well, it's this whole concept of having everything you need in one device, right? And there's this time where, all these little devices doing these things, and what Steve Jobs did, what was awesome, was he took your iPod and your phone and he made the same device, and we're just kind of more incrementally moved towards you only need one device to carry around everywhere.
I don't know if have you ever read this book, or the series rather?
I have not.
It is fantastic. It's called Quarter Share. It's by Nathan Lowell. It's basically a space soap opera. And in the book, though, the main character has a tablet. They just simply refer to it as a tablet, and he slaves his tablet to the ship's computer. He uses it in his quarters to study for exams. He puts credits on it that he uses when he goes out to the ports and purchases items. And the tablet is as much of a character as the main character, right? And they even use it to run statistical models in the storyline and all this other stuff. And to me, it's exactly what you're talking about. Having that one device that is sort of everything to you.
When was it published? How future predictory was it?
Oh, well, it's not. It hasn't been that long. I mean, it's kind of in the tablet era. This particular copy is 2007.
Okay.
You can actually find it on like audiobooks and stuff like that. You can get the whole thing, listen to the whole thing online for free.
Pre-iPad.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. You're right. It's pre-tablet device.
There were some tablets lying around, but not as common as the iPad or that touch interface. I think of Neil Stephenson's Diamond Age when I hear that. Any of you guys read that?
Diamond Age. No, I haven't. Have not.
That's highly recommended reading. It's a really interesting. I don't know if it counts as cyberpunk, but alternative future, and the story is about something completely different, but it revolves around this book designed to teach a kid everything they need to know in life. Be the mentor, to be the teacher, be the role model for kids who don't have anyone else, and we're very, very close to reality. It does some weird stuff where it makes it so that it can't do voiceover without a human like reading the lines through it, and it's like actually our text-to-speech has gotten pretty good in the last like 20 years since it was written. Probably better than the author thought, but it's still really interesting.
I know. I try to. You wait until you try to explain things to your kids, and you're like, no, seriously, we didn't have the internet. No, seriously, we couldn't talk to our phones. We had phones in the house.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really lucky because I was very early in the internet generation. I got internet from, like, probably was one of the first generation of kids to have it. Because my dad was in electrical engineering, so he had tech lying around. I had access to computers from literally single digits. So we had AOL or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a point though where it's like telephones or electricity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or television, right? You didn't think about those things. You were just it was just there. It's just part of your life.
It's just so hard to think about the world before telephones, and like you think of it as like, oh, this Wild West, whatever, right? And it's like the world before the internet. Like, how did you get anything done? How did you do banking? How did you sort out payments?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I still remember when my father's company went direct deposit. He was like, I want a check. You cut a check for me, I will take it to the bank myself. And I'm thinking, even as a kid, I was thinking, but they're just putting it into the computer at the bank, right? They're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing anything with it, which I don't know if that was true or not, but that's what I thought when I was a kid. And but now, yeah, why would you get a check? I mean, when I invoice clients, I get a check in the mail, right? And they send me the check, and I just take a picture of it with my phone. Boop.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It's like I think I'm with you, Tobias. I'm sort of on the cusp, I think, of a generation that sort of had access to these things and didn't. But there was a time. I'm a teenager. I remember going to this like. I don't know, it was like a New Year's party type of deal. It was 3 states away. Me and my friends, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. So a week before, we're hundreds and hundreds of miles away from each other. And we might have emailed about it, but we probably called each other on an actual landline phone and said, okay, so I'm going to drive hundreds of miles away, and I will meet you at this place around that time.
Oh, right,
That's
sure.
it. You get in the car, you go. Anything could happen. We don't have cell phones. You're just,
Yeah.
And there's something lovely about that. I mean, there's something lost by that not being the case anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and it's getting that's even changing with like things like Uber, right? I mean, you push a button and a car comes, and you can see where it is, how far it is from you, who the driver is, what the car looks like, right? I mean, you have all this information at your fingertips. There's no mystery whatsoever. There's no white van that shows up and picks you up and then takes you off to God knows where. That's a whole different service. That's not Uber. Hey, Ed.
I was just going to type my apology note in there for being late. I'm afraid
Your apology note. Do you have a hall pass?
Yeah, do I have a hall pass? I was working. I completely lost track of time.
I'm glad you're here. We were just talking about Surface book and.
So how far along in the conversation did we get?
Oh, I don't know. Where were we, guys? We were.
Well, we just talked about the devices, really. I guess we talked about the Surface and briefly the phones.
Now,
we
was
didn't
that
talk about
announcement
HoloLens
today?
yet.
Was the Surface announcement today?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was I didn't catch the HoloLens part. I was late to the presentation on that.
They announced that the first wave of kits are pre-ordered. I think like
$3,000.
very soon, and yeah, it'll be $3,000, and sometime in first quarter of next year for the first generation of dev kits. That is.
I want one.
You want one? Michael, what would you do with it?
I don't even know. I just want one.
It's not the point, right? You just want.
Yeah.
I just want one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, the presentations they've made so far have been pretty compelling. I mean, I like Minecraft. My whole family likes Minecraft. We get together around the kitchen table and play it kind of head to head. And I remember the presentation where they did the HoloLens thing, and then there was this Minecraft map, and you could see it in, I don't know, 3D, I guess you want to call it. But I was like, no, that's cool. I paid for that.
Yeah, there's so many great uses for AR and VR stuff.
Yeah.
It's, we'll see how it develops in the future and how fast it'll catch on, but it seems like a pretty much a certainty that it will. There's a lot of different companies investing in it at this point.
Well, it makes sense.
Microsoft.
It makes sense for training, especially like I can think of. We all kind of like laugh at the videos about Surgeon Simulator and that sort of thing, right? Because they're goofy little people flopping hearts around and stuff like that. But I could see a practical application for that, where you're training future doctors, and you've got sort of this augmented reality thing, and you're able to figure out, like, they're actually able to try to experience without having to have a cadaver there or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can just imagine this conversation, 30 years from now, and people saying, "Man, did you realize that there were doctors who operate having never operated on a live body before, like not with any simulation or anything?"
Yeah, exactly.
No AR showing them exactly where to cut.
I know, it's barbaric.
It really is.
It's brutal. Yeah. When you think about how medicine is done today, it's really. I mean, we look at like Star Trek or something, right? And there's was it Bones, and he's got his, and then the person's healed, right? And the way that we do things today, once we get to that point, we're going to be like, how did we survive, right? How did we, as a species, how did we manage to make it this far?
I like the transhuman idea that we'll get good enough that we can replace our bodies before we figure out how to stop bodies from aging.
I did that exercise with my son the other day. He was talking about the possibility of being able to slow aging to the point where you couldn't stop it, but you could slow it to the point that it would be so gradual that you'd live for a really long time. And I said to him, I was like, he's 15, and I was like, okay, now ask yourself, how does that change everything around you, right? And who gets access to that, right? Is it just like public domain and everybody can get it, or is it just for the really rich? You have to start breaking those things down, because it really it changes a lot of stuff.
It's amazing to me too how quickly we as people adjust to these new technologies, like in sort of weird ways. Like in my last job, I had to support mobile devices for a lot of executives. People who have stressful positions, and a lot of money can change hands based on what they do during the day. And so it's amazing how quickly they would get super frustrated with their phone. Oh my God, it dropped a call. It did this. And sometimes and listen, it was my job to deal with that, and that's fine. And I share their frustrations, I get it. But sometimes I just wanted to like shake them and be like, 5 years ago, that device in your pocket was Star Trek. Like,
Right. Yeah.
And I get that it dropped a call, but it's the size of a credit card. You don't need to plug it into anything, and you can have a real-time video conversation with somebody in China with it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen
magic. That will get you burned at the stake 100 years ago.
That's right. He's a witch. Burn him.
Witchcraft! You've got a demon in your pocket.
Have you guys seen Tom Papa? He's on Netflix. He's talking about the post office, and he says the post office. Why do we still have it? He's like, I can send a picture of my testicles to all of Russia from my phone. Shut it down. We don't need it. He's like, we don't need the post office. I don't understand why it's still around. And it's so true. I mean, we have the world in our pocket, and yet we get frustrated when it doesn't do something
I think it's also highlights like how detached some people are from technology, right? Because we're all very self-selected group of people into technology.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had a wedding recently, and people preferred physical invites, and we had to mail out, 50 physical invites. And some people they prefer that. They don't get on the computer all that often. It isn't just an age thing either. It isn't just like all the older people, but there's just some people that aren't as connected, and they kind of don't know what they're missing out on. And people in that connected technology circle don't even realize that there's not people in it because we never hear from them. They're not on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I think it's about speed and value. If they can wrap their head around something quickly, right? It doesn't have a whole bunch of steps of things that they have to like unpack, and then if there's some sort of overwhelming value where they're like, oh yeah, that improves my life in some way, right? I'll adopt it. Otherwise, yeah, life is hectic and busy and noisy, and they're just like, whatever, right? I don't care. That doesn't help me improve my life. Yeah. Yeah, physical. Yeah, so you guys actually like put stamps on it and all that kind of stuff. You use the postal service.
Yeah, I mean, I actually use it fairly often just to mail like physical things as part of like my job, because we'll go to a hackathon or whatever, and at a hackathon it's easier to give out a flyer that says information than to like go to this web page because no one's going to pull out their phone.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and a flyer, right? You can stick it on the refrigerator, or it's something that it's tangible, so it can't be ignored, right? It can't be lost on a hard drive someplace.
Mm-hmm. Stickers and all that. I love stickers. Put them on everything.
I tell you, I got a piece of mail the other day. We moved into a new house. I got a piece of mail the other day, and it was like a survey. And I don't know. I tend to open junk mail just because I want to make sure that it's actually junk mail. Sometimes the stuff is made to look important and it's not, and then some stuff is unassuming and it's important. So I open everything. I opened up the survey, and there was a dollar bill in it. And the survey was pretty much like, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. We want you to fill out this information. We won't, it's anonymous, and we won't aggregate. We won't publish your personal information, blah, 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 blah." But there was a dollar bill in it, and I was like, I didn't take the survey because I don't know, I just didn't take the survey. But I was like, if I'd have thrown that out, there'd have been a dollar bill in the trash, right? I'm like, so you never know.
I've heard that's a thing, that like they actually get much better response rates to physical mail if you have money in it.
Oh, absolutely. I fully considered it because I almost felt, and it's it's the reciprocity, right? It's the whole concept of somebody giving you.
It would have cost you like at least like what 50-something cents to mail it back.
Maybe so, yeah. But even in that, you're like, hey, and a dollar really, it made an impression on me because I was like, wow, how many of these things did they send out, right? And how many of those went into the trash? They just like but apparently financially they figured it works out for them, I guess. But yeah, I'm assuming the response rate would have been pretty good.
Certainly better than if they didn't, include a dollar in each one.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And that's one of my pet peeves for companies, right? Is they always send out surveys, and they say right up front, please give us 5 minutes of your time to fill out this survey. But there's never a fill out this survey and you will get, right? Or
they try to do like, oh, you could have a chance to win this raffle of X, Y, Z, but I find more and more of them are just not worth my time, because they'll say 5 minutes and then like, okay, it's 5 minutes if I don't think about any of the results, which is probably not useful for you anyway, and I don't want to spend 15 minutes. Why couldn't you make this more fun or integrate it into your product? I think that's what I really don't understand for web pages, because you can, instead of asking me 20 questions in a row, just ask me one at a time, integrate in the product every now and then, leave a little pop-up,
Yeah, good point. And then you're just like, whoa, I'll answer one question, sure. Yeah. I tell you what, the other night my wife and I were sitting out. Our kids went to art class, and we were waiting for them. And my wife says, "You should take this personality test. It's from Penn State or whatever." And she had taken it, and she says it'll only take you about 10 minutes. And I said, "Oh, okay," and I signed up for it, and it said 240 questions. And I was like, "Wow, 240 questions." She says, "Yeah, it goes really quick. The answers are like really simple, and you go ahead. It'll just take you 10 minutes." Like, 25 minutes later, I was still taking the. I was like, but I was halfway through. I was like, you lied to me.
You're committed.
Yeah, I was already committed. I was already halfway through.
Now you gotta do it. You gotta do the other half.
Yeah, exactly.
These people have all read that book. Cialdini?
Yeah. Robert
Sometime
Cialdini.
back?
Yeah, exactly. The power of influence, man.
Yeah, the power of influence. Just keep a copy of that on the shelf behind one of us.
Yeah,
Check
I have it over
the
here.
title.
That's why I can remember it. I have it right here. I have it. I
you
have
go.
a whole book. I have a whole bookcase with these
Oh,
guys.
you can even tell you read it or you got it used. One of the two.
Oh, I know. It was brand new when I bought it. It's
Sure.
been
Child damage.
it's been dog-eared for sure. Look at there. I think I even look at that. I even have a bookmark. Yeah, I love those types of books. I love psychology of persuasion and stuff like that.
So you take me as a guy who still likes physical books.
I do, but I don't buy them anymore. I used to buy books and with this idea that I'd have a big bookshelf, right, with a big bookcase. But anymore, the other day, there's this place called Uncommon Objects here in Austin, and you can go there and find some really weird stuff. And they had this collection of books that were written maybe in the 50s or something like that, and it was all about just the history of things, right? It was everything from Roman and Greek history and all this other stuff. And these books were when you held them, they were substantial, and you felt like whatever you consumed out of this thing was just going to be just a wealth of knowledge. And it occurred to me for some reason, I was like, you know what? Can I get this book as a PDF? And I think it was in public domain or something like that. And I sure enough, I Googled it, and it's public. I can get it in a PDF. Now, am I going to read it because now it's on a PDF and it's not in my face? I don't know, but this series of books was there was maybe 5 or 6 books in this series, and they were all thick, heavy books, and the place wanted $20 or $30 a book. So right there, I was like, well, I'd rather carry 6 PDFs on my device, right, than carry these 6 books to the car to take them to my house. So, so I have a few books here that I purchased in the past, and I would love to get them either as audiobooks or as PDFs, and then maybe just pass these off in a garage sale or something.
I did that recently. I was the same way as you, and then I got rid of most of my books, and I went to a used bookstore and I traded them in for pen and paper role-playing books and coffee table books, because those are the only things that you can't replace.
Yeah. Well, and I feel bad though. I do feel. Here's the thing: is I actually have a copy of Animal Farm up there, and so there's part of me, and I've had this discussion with people before. There's part of me that doesn't want to get rid of the books, right? Because they're the physical, unaltered version of these books. Whereas, if you were to put the Constitution on a PDF, it could be altered, So you're kind of like, well, I don't know. I'm conflicted about that, but at the same time, I don't really find value in having a whole bunch of dead trees on my bookshelf.
Oh, you hurt my feelings.
Oh, sorry there, Ed. I didn't.
I'm the anachronism in the room, I tell you.
As we note the large bookcases behind you.
That's my small bookshelf, man.
Oh no!
I've got a whole room filled with books.
Do you really?
Yeah, I've got several thousand books.
Oh wow!
Got my own
non-technical books?
Library. It's a split. It's mostly non-technical books.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So on books, I was gonna say something, but you guys were talking. So on books, I now, like you, only buy books that on my Kindle if they are a fiction, some kind of fiction, thriller or whatever. I will read those only on my Kindle, unless it is a collector's book, something you can't get on Kindle anymore, or at all, because it hasn't ever been translated over. So like old books. However, anything on a reference, I still like to have physical copies because I find it to be really a pain to use electronic copies to use references because I like to bookmark them and be able to quickly flip to a certain page. And people will tell you, oh yeah, you can do that electronically, but I've never found that to be like easier. I've got 2 monitors, and if I have to dedicate a whole monitor to a book, that seems like a waste to me. So, anyways,
I have a
that's my take
solution
on
for
it.
you.
Go ahead.
3 monitors.
Yeah, I know. Well,
It's totally first world. Like I'm super privileged to have 3 monitors, but it really does help for that.
I have 2 and then a Mac. So when I say 2, I've got 2 on my PC, and then I got a Mac off to the side, and then I've got no more room for monitors.
Yeah, that's actually a really great use of like a tablet device, is to have your textbooks or whatever reference you have live in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's also nice in technical documents because people who make technical references now tend to include digital versions with actual hyperlinks or copy and pastable code, and it's nicer to have that digital connection or even updated.
I think the best of both worlds is to have both physical copy and then electronic. Because, yeah, certainly, like, there's cases where you're saying, oh, what page was that? I don't know. I know the keyword I'm looking for. Well, good luck searching a book that way, but you can do it with a PDF right away. So.
Well, I'll tell you, the one times that I have bought books, and these are the ones that I tend to hang on to. I bought the complete works of Shakespeare for 25 cents in 29 Palms, California, out of a thrift store. I just came across it, right? And I was like, the entire works of Shakespeare, and it's a beautiful book for 25 cents. Sold, right? I'll buy that.
Have you read it yet?
No.
Nope.
See, and that's where I wind up. I wind up with these books that I don't read, and I'm like, So, but I also came across this one, which is called "I Dare You." It's in fantastic condition. It's actually it was the CEO of like Ralston Purina, and it says printed in 1967, and which I think I don't remember when it was originally printed, but originally written. But anyway, the whole thing is him talking about the fact that if you don't have your health, if you're not physically able to get up and go to work every day and all that stuff like that, then your life really isn't worth that much, right? I mean, you think you have money, you think you have status, but if you don't have health, then you don't have anything. And it's a really, really interesting read from this person who you would think would not be publishing a book on this topic, right? He was it says founder and former chairman of the board, Ralston Purina Company, St. Louis, Missouri, and it's just a really interesting read. So I couldn't pass that up either, and I think I probably bought that for 50 cents or whatever. And it's those moments like that where I'm like, okay, I'm taking this thing home. I don't need another book, but this is good stuff. And that one I actually have read, so I don't know. I can't tell.
I'm typing around here. You can tell I'm doing stuff. How many books do you have, Charles? Just off the cuff.
No,
Physical books, not electronic.
Maybe I don't know, maybe 20 or 30, and I don't have that many. I've gotten rid of a lot of them over the years.
Fired.
I know it. I'm fired.
Completely fired.
But they're good ones. They're good ones. Like I said, I have Animal Farm. That's a good one. I have 1984.
Have you read it yet?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That one I have memorized.
Every couple of years, I still have to pull out my gigantic hardbound copy of The Stand, which weighs like 5 pounds, and lug it everywhere with me while I read it. Stupidly, I don't know why.
That's Stephen King, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Love that book.
Yeah. My English teacher in high school, she would not acknowledge that as literature.
I was late to the Stephen King thing. I think I bought into this notion of like, oh, he's a horror writer and he's this. 100 years from now, he's just gonna. First of all, he's so prolific. I mean, the work ethic of the guy, just puts out work after work after work, all of it above average, pretty much. And yeah, I just I love this. I love what he
I
writes.
used to love King. I love early King more than mid to late King. I don't really care for him after the accident.
What's the
Have you read
guy?
The Dark Tower? Have you read all of The Dark Tower?
But that wasn't after he got hit by the.
It sure was. He weaves his accident into it. He's a character in one of those books. It gets weird.
I read the first of those.
Oh, you got to keep
I
reading.
didn't
I
care
hated
for
the
it, but
first one.
I didn't realize.
I hated the first one, and then I had to get on a bus, and the only book I had was the second one, which somebody, and I had to take a long bus ride, and I loved the second one. I didn't stop. I didn't stop after that.
I thought the scene where he lost his fingers in the first one was good, though.
Yeah,
The creature thingy that ate his fingers.
I don't know, man. You could just tell.
Show change.
Well, I was going to say, King is basically the modern day Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, that's the way I think of him. You're saying 100 years from now, whether or not he'll be remembered. I think, if he is, he'll be remembered as a writer in our time that wrote these genre of novels, and he'll be kind of classified along with Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote a lot of dark stuff.
But I think it's a little dismissive to peg him down as horror. And you're right. This is a change of show topic, so maybe I should just shut up. But look at something like a more recent thing. And Ed, if you I can't remember what the book title is, the date that JFK was shot. And it's got these supernatural elements woven in, so it is a fantastical story. So it's very King-like in that sense. But it's written in a very naturalistic way, and it's excellent. I don't know. I just, I don't.
Which book by whom?
It's by Stephen King. The title is the date that JFK was shot. So 11/whatever/.
I've completely stopped paying attention to him since Charles is going to prove that he's in this century because he's got electronic devices.
Hold on, I have to take this call. Hold on.
You're not impressing us with your clamshells, though, my friend.
Hold on, wait. I gotta get to someone's on the other line. Hold on.
So yesterday.
That's the
day before.
Yeah. Which one of these screens is bigger? Which one is the?
That's still more modern than the phone I have.
The touch screen. Yeah, I don't know. Stephen King, very interesting guy. I personally love his we call that the origin story. How he came to be, or how he got started, how he kind of overcame
his problems, his issues.
Issues, yeah, I guess his adversity, yeah, his whatever. Right?
The story where he talks about how he was drunk out of his mind and his broke and his car was broken down, and then he drove over a cone, one of those orange cones. Then he got so angry that he drove along slowly and picked them all up. And he got to the last one, and then the police pulled him over and said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" "Oh, drunk, and you've been stealing all these cones. Time for you to go to jail."
See, it all comes back to Cool Hand Luke. That's very taking the heads off of parking meters.
Yeah, well, there was a time that where we respected the rebel.
Now very sold, and everything turned around.
Yeah. Another good book is this one. I don't know if you guys have read this one. Howard Schultz, Pour Your Heart Into It. Chairman and CEO of Starbucks.
What's it about?
This is a good book. Chairman and CEO of Starbucks. He talks about starting Starbucks. Basically, he went to Europe. He experienced coffee there. He really liked it, and he wanted to bring that to the U.S. But at the time, coffee in the U.S. was dominated by Maxwell House and Folgers and all that stuff. And people, he tried to raise money for it, and people laughed at him because they're like, "You're never gonna do that," And he started out with one store and grew it from there. And Starbucks was actually a bean importer. They actually were just kind of a coffee like a coffee boutique kind of store or whatever, and he needed a source for coffee beans and stuff like that, and eventually they bought Starbucks and the label and all that kind of stuff like that and turned it into what it is today. And it's a fantastic story, and the one compelling part about it, besides just the struggle to get there, is his father was basically a blue collar worker and did not have insurance. and that's one of the reasons why when he started Starbucks, he's like, look, people have to have the ability to have health insurance. If we can't price out the product, if we can't do business and be able to take care of our employees, then it's not worth doing. So that's why all the employees have health insurance and stuff. So it's a great story, great book. I don't know if you can find it on half price books or whatever. I definitely recommend it. That's my Oprah pick for the moment.
Okay, so now that we've started talking about totally not computer or game related stuff, somebody put us back on topic.
Well, this is good. This is indie right here. Charles Schultz, indie.
Well, it's funny because you actually learn a lot about business books that have nothing to do with tech, and they really relate to being an indie and running your own company. Because a lot of the stuff's the same. Like Jim Collins' Good to Great, I thought was very influential for me running a business. More recently, Trust Me, I'm Lying by what's his face, the Abercrombie marketing guy. What's it? Trust Me, I'm Lying.
You're talking about he's the marketer that everybody loves.
Holiday.
Nope, that's another one I was thinking about. Brian Holiday, is that his name?
Yes.
Okay.
But that one it's really, really good about figuring out how marketing works and how blogs are run. Not necessarily as like a how-to guide of like follow this and you will be successful too in scamming the system, but very relevant in learning. Like, why aren't people worrying about me? You have to understand how the sausage is made, right? I think as developers, they don't really understand how the media works, and it's something you kind of have to put your time into.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some great marketing books out there for that kind of stuff. The ones that are out today, and they really kind of talk about, like you said, not necessarily the how-to, not tweaking the knobs in general, but just the concepts. And if people don't get the concepts, then it doesn't matter if you tweak the knobs, right? Here's a book called the Mouse Driver Chronicles, and this one, it's a pretty unassuming book, right? It's just very very bland. I mean, you wouldn't even notice it if you were sitting on a coffee table. But it's a fantastic story about these two guys who decide that they want to make a mouse in the shape of a golf club, the head of a golf club, and they decide to do this out of school, a business school, and they get like $50,000 seed money, and they get a prototype made in China, and they go through all these trials and tribulations, and they've got like all these physical goods in their apartment, and they're trying to figure out how to get this stuff into the retail space. And at the time, retail was kind of like, and it still is for most part. You have supply. You have a manufacturer, and then you have wholesalers, and then you have middlemen and all this other stuff, and you have catalogs, and you're trying to get into sales cycles, and there was all this stuff going on, and at the same time, the .com stuff was blowing up, right? Everybody was going to all these parties, and all their friends were like, instant millionaires and all this stuff. And these two guys are trying to sell mice that look like golf clubs, and it just goes through that whole story, and it's just a fascinating read, and it's all about going from concept to to execution and trying to get your thing out there. And I don't think they wrote the book, and then they tried to publish the book, or I say try to publish it. They did publish the book, and I don't think it's necessarily like a hey, and we overcame adversity, and now we're millionaires. It was more like, hey, here's our story. Here's what we did, and here's what we learned, right? And you're going to go through that. You're going to have to learn all these things, and it's just part of it. Anyway. All right, I don't know if we want to keep going on the book recommendations. Apparently, I have more books on my shelf than I thought.
Oh.
I think bottom line is probably all nerds, and nerds like to read.
Would you like to form an LLC? Maybe. I'm looking at the shelf.
I'm looking at your books.
I've got classic ASP up there for the Microsoft.
I bet you got a guy Kawasaki up there.
I do. Actually, I have him in my audiobooks. See, now when you ask me if I have any books I didn't include audiobooks. I have a ton of audiobooks.
I can't even count how many audiobooks I have. I've been an Audible member for so many years now.
I think that's why I don't have as many printed books, because of Audible. Audible has killed printed books.
How about Seth Godin?
Seth Godin, he's a good read. That's who I thought Tobias was talking about earlier. Was Trust Me, I'm Lying. I thought that's who he was talking about. But I was actually thinking about Seth Godin's All Marketers Are Liars, which is a different book. Maybe the same kind of concept, but a different book. Guy Kawasaki, Enchantment. That's one of his more recent popular books. So, yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff in here. Just looking at. Tell you what. Here's a totally related topic to gaming and app development and tech and all that stuff like that. Listen to Free by Chris Anderson. It's the history of free, the impact of it, what it means, and one of the powerful concepts that he has in the book is he talks about it's easier to go from a penny to something more than it is to go from free to a penny. He's like the chasm that exists between free and paid is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely the case with the new app market. The people like to make these things like, oh, I'll pay $20 for popcorn at the theater, and $5 for an app is ridiculous. But as much as you want to gripe about that, actually, no, it's true. $5 is too much for an app. People are not willing to pay for it.
I actually have a bone to pick about that. When I listen to developer podcasts and they'll talk about an app and it'll come in and it'll say that does all these wonderful things and unicorns come out and they dance the chorus line and all this stuff, and then they go, but it's $5, which is a lot to pay for an app. And all this stuff. I'm like, shut up! Stop saying it's a lot of money to pay for an app. Just say how wonderful it is and it does all these things and unicorns come out and dance and leave it alone. Because if you keep telling the public that that a $5 is a lot to pay for an app, they're going to keep believing it.
Well, yeah, you don't do it in your marketing material. And to be fair, like you could charge $15, $20, $30 for an app and be successful. You just have to convince people that it's worth that much. And that takes more marketing. It's much easier to get people in your app and then sell them later once they're in it, once they know the game is good. And that's why in-app purchases work, because it's just a much easier marketing point of view.
Have you listened to, speaking of which, have you listened to Brian Tracy?
I don't know Brian Tracy.
Brian Tracy is a business speaker. He's got a thing out called he's been around for a long time. He's in the Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy. I mean, if you do any of those self-improvement books, you'll come across him. And he talks about Success Mastery Academy is one of his books. It's on Audible. Another one is Advanced Selling Strategies. And what he talks about is the fact that, like what you just said, that nobody can afford what you have, right? Nobody wants to pay for what you have. But as soon as you can explain to them the benefits of how it's going to impact them, how it's going to change their lives and stuff like that, you can charge. He said, so if they're not willing to pay your price, you just haven't communicated properly. You haven't convinced them, right? He said price is imaginary. So you're right. You're absolutely right. It's just a matter of marketing and explaining to someone why they should pay. Because I've seen apps. What's the one? Not Getting Things Done. But what's the one? There's an app. There's a company that makes these tools for like time management and to-do lists and all this stuff like that. And they regularly charge like $40 a pop for apps. And now, I'm not saying they're going to knock out the number one paid app chart or that they have millions of downloads, but they haven't backed away from this idea that the app is $40, and if you want to get it, you got to pay it.
Yeah, people kind of forget that there's a lot of games out there that maybe they'll only get 100,000 downloads, and as far as charts numbers, that's nothing. But if you charged $5 a pop, that could be a pretty good chunk of change for your development time, or even just $1 or $2, right? Who wouldn't want $100,000 for the game?
Yeah, I don't need. I mean, I would love it, but I don't need $500,000 for my development time on one game. Not at the quality that I produce games. So.
What were you talking about earlier? You were talking about Ed. You said say his name again. The marketer.
Godin.
Seth Godin. Yeah, there's Seth Godin's got a book called Tribes. Have you read that one?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. For those who haven't, he basically he's talking about this idea that it's quality, not quantity, right? You don't need a bunch of people. You just need a few dedicated people who are part of your tribe. And I think of that with like slow build type of apps, things where you're like people see the value, they tell their friends, the tribe grows, and then eventually you have a dedicated group of people who are part of your tribe. I think where the app stores fall down is they don't allow the tribe. One, the app stores fall down because they don't give the tribe the opportunity to give the developer more money. But two, the developer falls down because they don't look for other ways to let the tribe give them more money. What do you guys think about that? We talked about this a little before on the show.
Well, how would they do so? I mean, outside of the in-app purchase
Well,
methodology.
yeah, for example, I mean, granted, it depends, right? So if you're doing Flappy Birds, and you know, I would think that in that situation you would have to come up with T-shirts or stickers or
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
you know what I'm saying. You need to give them another way
Yeah,
that they
but
could give
Apple
you
would
money.
quash that in a second, as far as anything you try to do within the app. If they
Oh
saw
no
you
no
doing
no
it,
no no! You definitely would not sell it. Yeah, in the app, you'd have to do it. You'd have to do it apart from, right. You'd have to do it. It'd have to be. But there's these days you can do. You can monetize in a bunch of different ways. And you could even, I mean, like Patreons come up, and people take Patreon as a way to do things to give back to their audience, but at the same time the audience can give to them.
I don't know, like you say it depends, but the real answer is that like whatever game you're going to make, there are different monetization strategies that could or could not work, and they depend pretty much entirely on what you want to do. And it's less about which way is right, or even which way is right for this game, but kind of more of a mix of what's right for you as a developer. Because if too many developers like, oh, ads is the right way, and just do ads, and they don't really think about that, and they don't try and make their ads nice, and they think of ads as a punishment, and so they try to put it in a corner, and then no one clicks on their ads, and then they don't make any money. When if you're making an ad-based game, the ad should be awesome. You should want as many players as possible to love seeing cool and interesting ads. And if that sounds weird to you, then you probably shouldn't make an ad-based game.
Yeah, I tell you something that I saw the other day, and I think this is interesting. Crossy Road, they have all these little characters in their game, and you can unlock them, and that's part of the experience. And at the same time, there's what's the game that's really popular? It's Monument, or I'm talking
Monument
about
Valley.
Yeah, Monument Valley. Okay, there's now a new Monument Valley character in Crossy Road that you can unlock, and I'm thinking that is a total business development move, right, between the two companies. Now I don't know if they're doing it, if they just did an in-kind sort of trade, and sort of capitalize on the momentum of both games, and the tide, rising tides rises all boats, that kind of thing, or if they have some sort of deal. But
straight cross-promotion deals are a really good way to go. We did it with Blast Monkeys. It helped us for our success. We had a Zoo Club themed world, and then Zoo Club had Blast Monkeys that you could have as part of your zoo, and help both apps.
And see there, right there, there's a way that's outside of the box sort of thing for the developers to make more money, right? But you have to kind of look outside of yourself and say, well, you can't do it all by yourself. You're going to look for other ways, and I think that's a good example. And like you said, you're right there. You're validating that it works. So it's that kind of stuff. I think that YouTubers, the popular YouTubers, they do that all the time. They're cross-promoting each other. They come and do skits together. They hang out, but it's like you said before. It's kind of like, what do you want to do? How much do you want to do? Now, if you just want to kind of sit behind the screen and write the code and then put it out there and hope for the best, then yeah, maybe that's the end of it. But it just seems like there's definitely a lot of opportunities. It just comes down to what the developer wants to do. And I'm always going back to, I think about there's a quote from Ronald Reagan, where he's like, there's not a jobs problem. It's just people are picky.
You can't look at advertising as a money problem. oh, I don't have money, so I don't advertise, or I need to advertise, I just need to throw money at that, because then you're just dumbly spending money. The only way that could possibly work is if you're just spending money to hire a full-time advertising person to make those decisions for you, because you don't want to have to deal with it.
Yeah. But yeah, I really like the Crossy Road model, where it's rewarded gameplay, where there's characters that you can unlock. I mean, that says more about intellectual property, right? It says more about being able to develop something for the community. I don't know. It smacks of a certain spirit that is there, besides just trying to slap something out with ads and hoping that you'll make $1 million. I don't know. All right, what else you guys want to talk about?
Although speaking of making $1 million, I just want to give props to Pop the Lock. Still, probably haven't made $1 million, but they're still in the top 10.
Is he?
Now week 4.
Fantastic.
And they're still there. So, and that's top 10 for games, not top 10 overall. So, but they floated down to 8th place here earlier this week, and then that's when I looked, and then now they have percolated up. So
I wonder what spurred that. I mean, how did they get on their radar?
Yeah, it's puzzling to me. I mean, it's genius, whatever it is. It's so
I like the way you cut your eyes just before you said that.
I mean, there's absolutely nothing to this game, and yet it's just still crushing the charts.
Yeah, it's a very. I mean,
I'm not saying that there's nothing to
game.
the development of the game, because there's a lot to the development of the game. It's easy to look at a game like that and go, oh yeah, I can make that in 5 minutes. No, you couldn't make that in 5 minutes. People who think that when they see these games they're fooling themselves.
Tobias, when you guys were designing Blast Monkeys, was there a point where you're kind of like you felt like that had already been done, or?
I mean, people laugh all the time, like, oh, you got to make the most original idea, and that has nothing to do with making a successful game at all. Like, it's not to say that, oh, you need to copy everybody either, but there's a lot more to success than originality. There's a lot of really good original games that no one's ever heard of, and for Blast Monkeys, it's cut the rope. Like, we're blatant about it. We saw cut the rope, and we okay, let's do something a little different. It's not literally cut the rope. It's a completely different physics mechanics where you shoot a monkey out of a cannon, but you're just collecting 3 things and then going to a goal. That's cut the rope right there. Your level of menu and everything is very similar, but there's still a lot of room in that kind of genre. There's still match 3 games, because the ones that are really successful do something a little different. Candy Crush is very different than Bejeweled, but they're kind of the same game. But you play them, they're very different experiences. Blast Monkeys, Cut the Rope, kind of the same game, but different experiences.
But then they don't. You've got your own DNA in there.
I absolutely love Bejeweled and other similar games like that, but I can't stand Candy Crush. So it works in an opposite fashion.
Oh, I can't stand it for all kinds of reasons.
It just emphasizes that they're different games, right? Like, you might enjoy one, you might not enjoy the other, but even though they're the same mechanics, that implementation, that art style, that the meta around that moment-to-moment gameplay changes a lot of stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That's probably your favorite phrase now, Charles.
What's that? Sweet. It's funny.
All right, I think I'm going to have to bail here too. Actually, I have a kitten party going on that I need to attend.
Oh, it's already going on. You're missing the kitten party.
Yes, I raised. The short story is I raised kittens that were found in my then girlfriend's backyard, and then I ended up giving them to friends, and we're having all of them reunion downstairs right now. And apparently, there's a bunch of cats in the house I probably ought to go see. But thank you again for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. This is really fun. I'd love to come back sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Yeah. So.
Sorry, I missed the first part of the show.
And cats in the house sounds like that sounds like either a game or a.
Oh, we'll probably be playing cat-themed games. This too. Kitten in the Blender will probably be pulled out, despite the irony there. Before I go, though, I will selfishly plug my own podcast, Be Indie Now, where I interview independent game developers and talk with them one-on-one. Haven't done episodes recently because I was on parental leave with this baby, but I will be kicking back into gear very shortly, and I still have a catalog of like 50 episodes that you can enjoy.
Yeah, and I highly recommend them. Definitely, you have a great interview style. I love the questions that you ask, and everybody seems to have sort of a unique perspective on. Well, everybody does, right? Because they have their own experiences and their own perspective and how they approach the topic. So, yeah,
I'll
go
need to
check
have
it out
you
for
on
sure.
sometime too.
That would be interesting. Yeah, definitely. We could do that.
We'll arrange it. All right, I gotta go.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
All right, guys. Well, it's us. Do we want to continue on, or do we want to? What is this? Do you want to go for the bonus round, or would you like to? What's that?
Well, I had a topic idea, but I don't know if anybody's interested in talking, so I'll throw it out there, and if you guys aren't interested, then we'll just.
I am. I will try and chime in. I've been lurking, as I said. I'm trying to get some other stuff done, but
I've been having trouble stopping working myself, so don't feel bad.
All
Mike,
right.
if you're listening, Mike, I'm working on the game.
Working on a game? All right.
Not Mike, you Mike, the other Mike, sorry. The Mike I'm working with. Sorry. Wrong Mike. He's probably upset with me because we're not done yet, so I'm doing my best to get all these things in. Anyways, the topic I wanted to throw out is another topic that bugs me sometimes. So last week I asked about how control. Earlier, either in last show, Monday, or last week I asked about inputs. Another thing that makes it difficult for me when developing games is trying to decide on the primary orientation or the only orientation, depending on what kind of game you're making. Some games can have multiple orientations, but primarily you have one. And so I'm always faced with this quandary of, should I make it portrait or should I make it landscape? And I know that the easy answer is, well, whatever best suits the game. But sometimes you've got games that could go both ways. How do you make the choice?
Well, I think if it can go both ways, you should make it both ways.
Oh, Charles, with the easy answers.
Well,
That's okay. This doesn't have to be like a deep topic. Maybe people are like, yeah.
I think it. Well, I don't know. You guys, rest of you guys chime in, but I'll just say I think it just depends on what it is, right? Like I've got some games here. Even one of them that I put out recently that. It's words. It's just letters on the screen, and if you turned it landscape, all the little letters could just swivel, right, and it would still be the same game. But I think
then you have to manipulate all your interface elements to get it to fit right.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that having played the game, it makes more sense to hold the device in one hand like this and use your finger to draw and do, I don't think it would be the same to hold it like this and then try to draw on the screen.
What's the ideal play experience for you? iPhone or iPad? Because I feel like if it's iPhone is ideal, then landscape, or rather portrait. But iPad, you're already committing to a larger screen. In that case, I like a nice 1024 by 768.
I did some reading on this that agrees with you. So before the show, I asked this question in whatever the heck that thing is, Slack. Here I'm reading my icons very, very slowly. Slack, I asked it in the Slack thing, or presented it there anyways as a possible topic. And then I did some reading, and generally the answer was form follows function. First of all, if the game can only work in landscape, it has to be landscape or portrait. But the other thing is if you expect people to be playing this on their phones, it's almost certainly going to do better as a portrait game unless it requires two hands. And then people with iPads generally prefer landscape, especially if they're going to play it at night lying in bed, which was kind of like an interesting side note that somebody made. I'm like, yeah, that's true. I really never thought about that. I've tried playing games that required landscape on my iPad lying in bed, and I hated it because the damn thing is so top heavy.
Yeah, it does make a difference as to when you think people are gonna play it. I mean, I play, and this is not specific to. I mean, you can play this anytime, but for myself, I play Clash of Clans before I go to bed and when I wake up in the morning. just because it's usually time sensitive, right? You got 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, or whatever, and then you only need really to manage resources for a couple of minutes, and then you're done. You move on to whatever it is you had next. So I do that in the morning. I do it at night. I'd be interested to know if they keep stats on that.
So I guess this wasn't a very deep topic, although it does raise for me that I am very much looking for the new design space that the iPad Pro is going to bring to the table. Because that's such a large screen that you can now think of it as both the super landscape, but almost like how you could fit two portrait apps side by side, or two landscape apps.
It's basically an iPad's width on one side, right? If you divide the screen up, and then you've got maybe another 3/4 or whatever on the other side, or
it's
half.
like two iPads squeezed together.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, almost.
So that's quite a bit of real estate to work with.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm done. I'm thinking that this is going to bring on a whole new rush to do two-player games where people play two-player games on one iPad. Because I could see, the old iPads were a little bit too small to do games. You had the iPad between you and you're playing together. But man, I think for sure with the big one, that should be a doable thing. And you got a little leeway in there, and you're not yanking the iPad back and forth or anything silly like that. So.
Interesting.
Anyway.
It certainly makes lots of more real estate for. I'm thinking if you have games that have inventory, you can pull out the inventory and you can look at things and you can make decisions. You have all these room for panels and stuff now.
It's also going to be great for making games where you have in-app editors.
Yeah.
Right. So
right.
Definitely thinking about that.
Did we talk about this before? Did we talk about I think we talked about this on Monday, the haptic sort of feedback kind of thing.
Haptic, yeah.
I don't think Jason.
The term haptic, but okay.
I don't think Jason was there, so I wanna broach this.
Yeah, Monday we talked about haptic.
Yeah, so the iPhone 6s introduces this peek and pop thing, right, where you can kind of push on the screen and stuff, and when you do, it gives. We'll just use the term haptic. It gives a haptic feedback, right? It kind of buzzes when you do it.
Pinpointed to where you're touching, or
yeah. Well, I think so. I really didn't pay that much attention. I just know the device sort of,
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just say for the most part, it's where your
Android phones have been doing that for a while.
Yeah. So, do you think that developers should take advantage of that though and make a whole new level, like what? Well, okay. So hold on. There's haptic, and this is where we were splitting hairs before. There's haptic, and then what Apple calls taptic, right? So what they're really right now calling 3D touch. This idea that you push, and if you push a little harder, then you're going to get a multi-layer, multi-layers of touch, and they're doing sort of this taptic feedback, right? So
it works on the watch. I'll say that for it. The notion, something that maybe needs to be evolved on the watch is it being intuitive to knowing when you need to push harder. But once you get used to that, I will say it's nice to be able to just touch and then give a push. I think there's user training on that. You sort of have to train the user, and I think in most cases it's probably not going to be worth doing because I don't know how intuitive it is, at least not yet. But if you've got a situation where it applies sort of where it's a natural fit, yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I'm with you. When on the watch, there's never a time when I know exactly. I mean, most of the time when I discover some 3D touch or some force touch sort of thing, it's by accident, right? I push a little harder than I normally do, and then a menu pops up, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, I didn't know that was there. I think maybe on the phone, Apple certainly is. Well, I went and looked at the store. All the apps that support it besides Instagram are Apple apps, right? So that tends to, I think that means that there'll be a training period where people will become accustomed to using it in the Apple apps, and then as developers roll it out, then it will become more of a selling feature, maybe, for them to put in their marketing materials. and then maybe by that point people will be accustomed to using it or be trained to using it.
I think of it like drag down to refresh a list, which in my memory, the first time I remember seeing that was in the Twitter app a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was intuitive yet, but it made sense, and now it's become de rigueur, right? It's like the thing.
Yeah.
And I think there will be situations where, but again, we're talking about a huge install base, and only a small percentage of it have devices that can use this. I think we're at least a year, 18 months out from this becoming anything that you need to take into account in early development.
Yeah, the Verge had this great review of the iPhone 6S, and they were kind of like, Apple always says it's their best phone yet. This by far is their best phone yet. It really is a well-designed device. It has all these features. It's twice as fast. It's all this stuff, right? But at the end of the video, the guy said, "Do you need it right now? If you've already bought the 6, probably not, because by the time the developers actually catch up to implementing the cool features, the peak and the pop, and all that other business, you'll be buying the iPhone 7."
That's always the case with
That's always the case.
Yeah, but it was very well put. By the time you get it, you'll be buying.
We got to
it.
get the device in our hand, then we have to get it supported or get a way to implement it.
Yeah.
And then we have to understand it and play with it for a long time. And then
we also have to know that there's enough of them out there to make it worth our while to implement. And that will happen. I don't know that it's happened yet. It's let me put it this way. At this point, you certainly don't want to build a game that is even partially reliant on it. You don't want to make it a core. At the moment, you do it as a bell and a whistle, and you can't do it as a core mechanic because then you're alienating everybody who hasn't bought a new phone in the last month.
Yeah, unless, as I point my flip phone at you, unless you can come up with a truly creative way of implementing it that then drives sales of the devices. Because
I will say this, if you can come up with a great use for it, do it now and get yourself featured, because Apple loves to feature stuff that shows off the latest and greatest.
Oh yeah. If your interests are aligned with their interest, it makes complete sense, right?
That's why you got to be thinking about what's going to look really awesome on the iPad Pro.
You know what? If you can find a way, if you can start building Pop the Lock, but with a way that pressing harder does. I am dead serious. If you can make a Pop the Lock clone that somehow has a cool puzzle mechanic based on pushing it in, if the Room 3 comes out and a solution, and there are new unique ways to solve the puzzle based on pushing in, I think that's a potential. A, I think it's actually just kind of cool, and B, Apple will eat that stuff up and give you a feature.
Yeah. See, I'm thinking, you're playing the game. You have things running around the screen, and you tap something to target it, right? So you're gonna bring in some sort of airstrike. You tap it to target it. But then when you want to bring in like a nuclear airstrike or something like that, you push and hold, and then that does some it just immediately annihilates the
Does
target
it have
right there under
layers
your
of
finger.
sensitivity, or is it just tap versus press?
It's layers of sensitivity.
What you get back from them is a force and a maximum force value, and then you have to decide, where in that range is like the thing that you want to trigger X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I think it'd be. I don't know.
I'm thinking,
That's a possibility.
going way back when, there was the Zen Garden thing where you'd tap and the little ripples would go. Well, now you can tap, and depending on how hard you push, the ripples are going to react to that. I mean,
so the more angry you are when you play the game, the better.
Not in the Zen one, but that's
not in the Zen one.
The anti-Zen. Hey, here you got two flavors of it. You got. It's Zen and anti-Zen.
Anti-Zen. I got a flip topic here. Before I forget, I wanted to ask Michael a question. Michael, question for you with regards to a new plugin. I was supposed to do the Actions plugin, but I haven't had time for it yet.
Okay.
But I have another a thing that I've been distributing to people as a library, but it occurs to me that it might be useful as a plugin. It is a library that I ask people to require when they say, why does it, it's the common question. I wrote my thing, it worked great in the simulator, and it doesn't work on my phone. I don't see the picture or whatever. And it's almost 90% of the time a case error. So I have a library that I say, okay, guys, just go require this and then run this one line of code, and then it'll tell you in the simulator if you goofed up. Because they're not case sensitive, but I can do something to help discover that. So long question. I was thinking, you know, I could just distribute this as a plugin, and then people could simply require it when they're developing, and it doesn't do anything when it's run on the device. It disables itself. So this would help people. I'd see this question in forums. I'd just say, go require the plugin, whatever. It'll tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, does that sound like a reasonable plugin?
Sounds viable. Yeah.
All right. Sorry to distract, guys. I just wanted to ask before I went through that.
No, it's okay. As long as we're talking plugins, I don't know if there's a guy in the forums who's been reporting a couple issues with my Twitter plugin named Neil. Neil, I am working on it, and I hope to get to the bottom of it and push an update soon that will fix what he is experiencing.
What's he experiencing, just in case anybody else is?
Well, it's weird. In the Windows simulator, if he's posting a tweet with an image, it's posting, but it's not successfully calling back his callback function, which is bizarre because it works as expected in the Mac simulator, at least in my testing. And then I asked him to build for device, and he's having some weird issues on a couple of Android devices where in one case it's sort of the opposite. I don't know if his callback function is being called or not, but the tweet itself isn't posting. So it's something going on. I'm not sure exactly what, but I'm working on it. And I'm
One all of this fails just plain Twitter.
I'm sure it's something I basically I need to start plugging in a bunch of print statements and running it on different things and looking for the breakpoint and figuring out what's going on. But and then I also have a couple in addition to the talking text plugin, which I have sort of working but need to finesse and get ready. I also for work, for my day job this week, had to come up with a module to parse comma-separated values, a CSV file, and convert it into a Lua table. And I thought that's sort of useful, particularly if you're like me and like to lay things out in tables, but being able to do it in Microsoft Excel will just make that process so much faster and easier to visualize your organization. To be able to save that as a CSV and import it right into as a table, I think could be really cool. So I'm going to pluginize that.
You should send me the code for that. So I've got my own, but I'm always looking for a better CSV to table converter.
Okay. Yeah. We'll let me neaten it up a little bit, but yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, well, it doesn't have to be that neat. I'm just the only one looking at it.
And then I also just, there's stuff out there for FTPing. It's not like I'd even be creating something, but I think just come up with a couple of nice, easy-to-use, convenient functions, come up with some simple syntax. I thought, that's something that could be filled by a plugin. It might just be useful for some folks, so I might do that.
Hey,
do you make use of web views in the Twitter plugin?
Yes, I do.
Does the new Safari view interest you at all?
Walk me through that. Forgive my ignorance here. What's this new Safari view?
It's just apparently a better web view for iOS 9. It stores cookies and a bunch of other stuff.
Nah, I mean, I only use it when authenticating, and it's like a real fast sort of thing that pops up. Web views in the Windows simulator interests me when that's ready because I have a workaround for that I can get rid of. But I mean, I don't know. I'd try it, but it's so quick. It's a full screen web view that I use, so I don't know that. And cookies, I don't need cookies. I don't, it's single session and throw it away. So.
No, just curious. We had people asking for it.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
I had this strange thing happen to me last week, I think it was. A user asked a question in the forums, and I answered back, and I said, here's the solution, here's some code, but you need to use this plugin. And I pointed them to my new math plugin, or my collision calculator. And the strange thing that happened is the user came back later and advised somebody not to use it, but here, use my library instead, where they had reverse engineered my plugin. And then they said, the reason I did this is because I didn't want to wait for the plugin to download. I wanted to have it right there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, I know, it blew my mind too. So what the guy was saying was, he was saying, when I require your plugin, I have to wait an extra, whatever it is,
The first time.
Yeah,
a few
the
to
seconds.
first
load my
time.
app when I do a reload.
Only the first time. It'll download it, and then
It's only the first time, right?
Yeah.
It caches it.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. And
That's
okay.
bizarre. But it is just a Lua plugin. So he
Yeah,
can go
it's
to
just
his
a super
plugin folder.
lightweight one file Lua plugin. It wasn't like downloading Mars or something, you know. It wasn't like
Mhm.
the Mars photo catalog or whatever. So it was weird. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know what to say to that.
even when you build, it's like it doesn't take that much extra time, even if you get a bunch of plugins required. So
It can be, but usually not much. Usually
only
Android
really
takes
if
a
they're
while.
coming from multiple sources, right? So
No, we have it all on one server, and all
Oh,
that
you have it
stuff
all on
just
one
gets
server.
shoved into your project.
Could it be dependent on their particular internet connection at their location?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's got to be it.
It will come back slower if you have a slower connection.
I should have said is get rid of that 50. I want to make a joke. I can't even remember the slow speed modem anymore. What is it?
56K modem.
Yeah.
If you hear a noise in the background every time you build coming out of your phone, you need to get a better internet connection, man.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I still remember the days when somebody would call you, you were downloading something, you were like, disconnect you.
Kids today don't even know what that is. Wah,
No,
wah.
don't even know, man. Don't even know.
Kids today.
When you were lost at the supermarket, baby, you were lost. Even if you were one aisle over, you were lost. All right, guys. Well, I don't know. That seems like a good place to leave it. You don't want to
Rounded it up there.
wrap it up for tonight? I'm kind of tired. I don't have anything else to talk about personally.
I'm tired today too. And I also want to finish this work, so finish
Yeah.
this and go to bed.
Michael's still at work. I don't know what that's all about.
But I'm so bad.
Stuff that is critical to tomorrow morning that I have to get finished.
Yeah.
Well, we all love you for it.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Kudos.
Yes, we do.
Kudos coming your way.
Commence the downloading of kudos.
Take your kudos. I don't need them. What I really need is extra sleep.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Okay, guys, take it easy. See
All
you
right,
next week.
fellas.
See ya.
Cheers.
Have a good night.